Good morning, students. I'm sure you know the topic for today is an approach to cough. Let me give you two case scenarios and let's see, are you able to relate to these cases. The first is a 23-year-old gentleman who presents with a history of fever, cough with scant sputum for 3 weeks. He is treated with antibiotics for 5 days. Following that, the fever subsides, but he has got a persistingly dry, hacking cough. On examination, the chest is normal and the blood and X-ray is also normal. The second case scenario is of a 45-year-old gentleman who presents with complaints of clearing the throat every morning with slight mucoid expectorations. There is no complaints of fever, cough, chest pain, breathlessness or wheeze. Again, the chest examination is normal and the blood test and X-rays are normal. How often do you come across patients like these and you wonder what is the cause and how do I manage? Often many times as you treat them with various medications, they do not seem to respond and the patient and the physicians, both of them are a little frustrated. So the learning objectives for today's presentations are three. One is just to quickly go through the mechanisms of a cough reflex that will help us to understand why a person has a cough and how do we diagnose and treat it. Second is to look into the various causes of cough. And third is how do I approach a patient who presents with cough. Cough is a defense mechanism by our body to protect us. We'll look into that. But more importantly, cough is a symptom. Cough is not a disease that needs to be treated, but cough is a symptom which should trigger us to find out what is the real cause or the root cause and treat that. Is it good to cough? It can attract attention, signal displeasure, but more importantly, it protects our airways and clears our airways. It is of public health concern when we cough in a crowded area where you can potentially spread infections, and that is something that we need to keep it in our mind. Now, what are the mechanism of a cough reflex? For any reflex, there is an afferent pathway and there is an efferent pathway. The afferent pathway for cough is carried in the vagus nerve. The stimuli arises from the respiratory tract, the ear, the pharynx, the larynx, the lungs, the tracheobronchial tree. But also to remember that there are receptors which picks up from the heart, pericardium and esophagus. So any irritation in these areas can also stimulate cough, and in our evaluation of cough, we need to keep these differentials in mind. The cough receptors can be stimulated chemically or mechanically. The mechanical stimulation is through these rapidly adapting receptors or the slowly adapting stretch receptors. Any particle that stimulates these receptors will stimulate the cough reflex and the patient will complain of cough. So if we look at the whole pathway, we have an afferent pathway through the cough receptors which are in the respiratory epithelium. These stimuli are carried, the impulses are carried through the internal laryngeal nerve, then through the superior laryngeal nerve and then through the vagus, and these impulses reach our medulla, and in the cerebral cortex and medulla the whole impulse is processed, and the efferent pathway is through the vagus nerve again through the superior laryngeal nerve, which innervates the glottis, the external intercostal muscles, the diaphragm and the other respiratory muscles. So when a cough reflex is activated, there are 4 phases we need to remember in the cough. The first is the inspiratory phase where we take a deep inspiration. Second is called the compressive phase where we expire with the glottis closed. The third is called the expiratory phase or also the explosive phase where there's a sudden opening of the glottis and the air rushes out of our airways, and the fourth is the relaxation phase. Let us look at this video, and that will give us a little more clearer idea how the cough happens.
Coughing is a sudden expulsion of air from the lungs through the epiglottis at an amazingly fast speed. Compared to a tennis ball hit at 50 miles per hour or a baseball at 85 miles per hour, coughing is faster with an estimated speed of 100 miles per hour. With such a strong force of air, coughing is the body's mechanism for clearing the breathing passageways of unwanted irritants. Let's take a look at the vocal cords prior to a cough. In order for a cough to occur, several events need to take place in sequence. Let's use an unwanted irritant, such as water entering the trachea or windpipe, to trigger the coughing reflex. First, the vocal cords open widely, allowing additional air to pass through into the lungs. Then, the epiglottis closes off the windpipe, and simultaneously, the abdominal and rib muscles contract, increasing the pressure behind the epiglottis. With the increased pressure, the air is forcefully expelled and creates a rushing sound as it moves very quickly past the vocal cords. The rushing air dislodges the irritant, making it possible to breathe comfortably again.
If a cough reflex was not functioning, or if the impulse was impaired, there are consequences to that. In patients with impaired cough, they can have aspiration of oropharyngeal or stomach contents, which can cause acute airway obstructions, pneumonias, lung abscess, respiratory failure or adult respiratory distress syndromes, bronchiectasis and pulmonary fibrosis. So, it is very important that a cough reflex should be intact, which protects us from these complications. If you look at how common cough is, we have statistics from United States which shows there are 30 million clinician visits annually. In a pulmonary medicine OPD, 40% of their patients have cough. If you look at the gender distributions, women have more cough than men because of the heightened cough reflex sensitivity compared to the men. How do we classify cough? It can be classified based on duration. Less than 3 weeks is acute cough, 3 to 8 weeks is subacute cough, and more than 8 weeks is chronic cough. It can also be based on etiology, and this is called the ABC of cough. From aspirations to birth defects to compressive or cardiac, defects of mucus clearance, environmental lung disease, foreign bodies or functional cough, granulomatous diseases, hyperreactive airway diseases, infections and infiltrations. We will be dealing with each one of them separately. Can cough have any complications? Yes, if an elephant had to cough, you can have complications, but look at this fact. When we cough, the intrathoracic pressure rises by 300 millimeter of mercury, and when you explode, the air moves at the speed of 500 miles per hour. You can have your entire internal organs flying off. So, if a person who have recurrent cough, one that they are very self-conscious and little socially embarrassed, recurrent cough can also cause hoarseness and exhaustion. Because of the raised intrathoracic pressures, many of them can have headache and dizziness. Musculoskeletal pain and even rib fractures have been seen as a complications of chronic recurrent cough, and urinary incontinence because of the increase in intra-abdominal pressures. So, these are the various complications of cough. So, we need to control the cough as much as we are trying to find out the cause for cough. So, how do we approach a patient who has cough? I would put it in this manner. The objectives of the evaluation would be, first is to anatomically localize it. Where in the lung is the problem, or if it is outside the lung, where is the problem outside the lung. So, first is to find out the anatomical localization. Second, to find out what is happening in that part of this anatomical structure, what is the pathology. And third is to think of the etiology. Often we try to make etiological diagnosis first, but I would suggest that we go systematically. First locate the anatomy, second the pathology, and then think about the various etiologies that would work in that particular area. So, how do we anatomically localize them? I would say divide the respiratory tract into upper respiratory and lower respiratory. Now, in the upper respiratory tract, you have the nose, the paranasal sinuses and the throat, and in the lower respiratory tract, you have the airways, parenchyma and interstitial. So, just keep these simple anatomical facts in mind. When we evaluate the history, we are trying to first locate them to an anatomical location, and then we will think about the pathology and the etiology. Now, what symptom will locate them to the upper respiratory? Symptoms of sneezing, nasal discharge, nasal blockage, or pain and tenderness over the sinuses. Now, that is very obvious, but often we forget the obvious. So, these symptoms locate them to the upper respiratory tract, and for the lower respiratory tract we have symptoms like cough, sputum production, wheeze, chest pain and breathlessness. So, these symptoms locate the problem to the lower respiratory tract. Now, how do I analyze various symptoms to the various anatomical locations? Now, if a person has cough, it can be because of problems in the airways, in the parenchyma, interstitium or the pleura. If a person has a sputum production, then there can be only two locations, either the airways or the parenchyma. Any interstitial or pleural will not have a sputum production. This is also called endobronchial symptoms. If a person has a wheeze, it straight away locates it to the airways. If a person has chest pain, it locates to the pleura or the chest wall. And if a person has breathlessness, it could be either in the airways, parenchyma, interstitial, pleura, vascular or chest wall. So, what you will realize is breathlessness by itself does not locate to any anatomical location, because a problem in any of the locations can have breathlessness. It is important also to go into the details of breathlessness, how it started, what is the cause, which will give us some ideas, but breathlessness by itself may not be able to locate. So, keep these facts in mind as we will approach patients with cough. When we talk about pathology, what we mean by pathology is what is the pathological process happening at that anatomical locations. For example, in the airways you can have inflammation, infection, bronchoconstriction or dilatation of the airways. So, the objective is, with the history, can I locate first to an anatomical site, and second to say what pathology is happening at that anatomical site. Furthermore, in parenchyma you can have congestion, inflammation, infection or a cavity or fibrosis. Similarly, in interstitial area you can have congestion, inflammation, fibrosis, and in pleura you can have fluid, air, tumor or fibrosis. The third is to identify the etiology. The etiologies could be either congenital, congestive, inflammation or allergy, infections, toxic or trauma. So, these are the broad headings that I am giving. So, I am just repeating again, the objective of my clinical approach is first to anatomically localize it, second is think of the pathology, and finally to think of the etiology. So, the most important thing in our clinical evaluation is the history, and all of you are familiar with history. It is important to take a detailed history to be able to locate the anatomy, the pathology and the etiology. The usual complaints would be cough. We need to take a detailed history of cough, I will come to that. The history of sputum, associated respiratory symptoms, and associated other symptoms which is outside the respiratory symptoms. To ask a history of past history like tuberculosis, ask personal history like those of atopy, smoking or pets, family history of atopy, treatment history, especially drugs like ACE inhibitors, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, social history, that of cooking in using wood or coal where you can have smoke, or exposure to environmental dust. In the history of cough, we need to ask the history of the duration of cough, the age of onset, the frequency in a day, the diurnal variation, how does it vary from morning till evening, the course of cough since the time it started, how is the cough, is it getting better, same or worse. Then we ask about the character of cough, and we ask about the relieving and aggravating factors, especially we will ask for food, dust, pollen, drugs, temperature, position and sleep, and then we will ask various associated symptoms. I am just giving you the main headings. As we look into specific conditions, we will be talking about each one of them. The character of cough is very important. There are different characters of a cough. It could be honking, which indicates a laryngeal pathology. It can be brassy or barking, which indicates pharyngeal pathology. It can be bovine, where there is a neuromuscular pathology, or it could be whooping in specific disease like pertussis. Let's look at the various videos which will tell us how does each character sounds like. Then we come to examinations. In the examination, it is very important to have a good general physical examinations. Look for pallor. Cyanosis indicates whether the patient is very sick, requires immediate attention. Clubbing talks about chronic diseases. Look for edema, whether the lung problem is affecting the right side of the heart and causing a right heart failure. And lymph node can give you some etiological diagnosis like infection or the malignant causes. Chest examinations would be done on the regular 4 headings of inspection, palpation, percussion and auscultation. Let's look at the practically how do I approach patients when they come to me with cough. So as I said, first we will divide them broadly into acute cough or chronic cough. Now, if this patient has got a cough for less than 3 weeks, what will I think of? I will again broadly divide them as upper respiratory tract or a lower respiratory tract. For an upper respiratory tract, the symptoms that I am asking for is if it is a running nose, congestion or sneezing, it is rhinitis located to the nose. If there is a throat irritation or pain, then I am locating it to the pharynx. If a person has headache, facial pain or some post-nasal drip symptoms, I am locating it to the sinuses. So, what I have first done is I have located them anatomically to these areas, then I think of the etiology. Now, if a patient has recurrent attacks of running nose, sneezing and cough and has an exposure of allergen, with the family history I would be thinking of an allergic cause. If the attacks are not so frequent, with no history of associated to any allergen, with no family history, I will think of a viral cause. In a viral cause, they can have associated myalgias and body pain, which would suggest a viral etiology. But if a patient has got fever, pain and purulent discharge, then I am thinking in terms of a bacterial etiology. Now, why it is important is, for an allergic cause, I would not be subjecting them to any antibiotics, which often happens in a private practice setup. Whenever you are thinking in terms of an allergic cause, you just need to give them simple antihistaminics. If it is a viral, just need to give it a little time with supportive symptomatic treatment and they'll get well. But only if a patient has fever, pain or purulent discharge that you need to add on antibiotics. We are having a lot of bacterial resistance because of indiscriminate use of antibiotics. There are many doctors who would prescribe antibiotics where not needed. Many times they are prescribed for a shorter duration of time. Sometimes the doses are not inadequate and there is a community based resistance pattern that is evolving. So, we should be very careful when to give them antibiotics. Now, acute cough of less than 3 weeks duration, when we come to the lower respiratory tract, we use different symptoms to locate it. Stridor and wheeze locates it to airways. Stridor is for the upper airway and the wheeze is for the lower airway. Cough with sputum production localizes it to the parenchyma. Cough with breathlessness to the interstitium, and chest pain, which is more on inspiration, localizes it to pleura. Now, in each of these areas there are different pathology, and like in airways you can have a foreign body, aspiration, bronchial asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. In parenchyma you can have pneumonias. In interstitium we can have congestion like left ventricular failure, and in pleura you can have various infections. All these can cause cough, but listening to the symptoms will tell us where it is located, and then we think about the etiology. Now, if a patient comes with cough and stridor, your immediate diagnosis would be a foreign body in the upper airways. They need immediate attention. If a patient comes with cough with wheeze, it could be either aspiration, bronchial asthma or chronic obstructive airway disease, and the treatment would be is to give them bronchodilators like salbutamol and Derify with steroids. The other cause would be is pneumonias, and pneumonias we classify them as typical pneumonias or atypical pneumonia. These are all community acquired pneumonias. If a patient presents with fever for less than 1 week, cough with mucopurulent sputum with mild breathlessness, you are thinking in terms of a community acquired typical pneumonia, and which is usually caused by Streptococci pneumoniae or Haemophilus influenza, and the drug of choice for that would be penicillin or amoxicillin. For atypical pneumonia, the fever would be at longer duration, 2 to 3 weeks, cough without much sputum, with moderate and severe breathlessness. They can have a lot of extra pulmonary symptoms like headache, confusion, myalgias, diarrhea or skin rash, and the usual etiological agents are mycoplasma, chlamydia or legionella, and the drug of choice would be doxycycline or erythromycin. So, it is very important to differentiate a typical from an atypical, because the organism and the treatment would be different. A patient who complains of cough with pink frothy sputum and who is very breathless requires to be propped up and gives you a history of paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea or orthopnea with palpitations and pedal edema, that is a very clear cut setting of a congestive cardiac failure. They need to be treated with diuretics. Now, when we look into subacute causes for cough, it is a transition between the acute and the chronic, and many of the causes of acute and chronic may overlap over here, but typically the causes in this group would be post-infectious, bacterial sinusitis and asthma. Usually the duration of cough will be between 3 to 8 weeks. Now, what is important now is to how do we approach a patient with chronic cough that is more than 8 weeks. We can have two approaches. One is chronic cough with a normal X-ray findings, and the causes are listed here as post-infectious bronchitis, asthma, chronic idiopathic cough, or they can be causes outside the main respiratory tract like post-nasal drip or gastroesophageal reflux disease, or it could be in form of environmental pollutants or allergens, smoking or drugs. Let us look at each one of them. upper airway cough syndrome. It's also called post-nasal drip syndrome, and the mechanism is secretions from the nose and sinuses. They drip into the upper airway and stimulates the cough receptors there, and the typical symptoms will be a tickle in the throat, throat clearing, hoarseness, nasal congestion, but about 20% of the patient can present only with cough. On examination, they will have inflamed nasal mucosa. Secretions would be seen in the posterior oropharynx. And you need to think of allergies or chronic sinusitis in them, and they need a treatment in terms of antihistaminics for about 2 weeks. On the other hand, when we look at gastroesophageal reflux disease, or also called GERD or GERD, there are micro aspirations of the gastric contents through the esophagus into the respiratory tract, and they can complain of cough. What really happens here is the lower esophageal sphincter in many people are lax, so the gastric contents refluxes into the esophagus, and if it reaches up to the pharynx, it can irritate the cough receptors and cause cough. It also forms a vicious cycle. When you have a cough, there is increase in the abdominal pressure, and that pressure causes more reflux, compresses the stomach and causes more reflux and subsequently more cough. So, it is very important to break this vicious cycle. The classic symptoms is of heartburn, sour taste in the mouth, and almost 75% of the patients may present only with cough. These are two very important causes that you need to remember in your practice, is a postnasal drip and gastroesophageal reflux disease, who can present with cough with all evaluation looking normal. The diagnostic test for a GERD is 24-hour pH probe, or you can do a esophagogram to look into the motility of the esophagus. These can be treated with proton pump inhibitors for at least 2 months, and if your patient improves with proton pump inhibitors, you can also indirectly label them as having gastroesophageal reflux disease. The other advice that you need to give them is about lifestyle changes, which requires weight reduction, avoiding diet having fat or spicy food, and very importantly, you should tell them to avoid lying down immediately after food, because when you lie down after food, most of the gastric content refluxes up. Second also important thing is to avoid drinking water immediately after food, because when you drink water, the level of the gastric contents rises, which predisposes to more reflux. So, these are some of the very important information that we need to tell our patients. They should also remember that the time of their night meal and the time of the sleep, there should be at least minimum 1 to 2 hours of gap. So, that means they need to eat early, eat light in the night time, and only after 1 to 2 hours they should get into the bed. Now, the other group of patients would be cough with abnormal chest x-rays, and that I am clubbing them as parenchymal and interstitial diseases. In the parenchymal, we have pneumonias, suppurative lung diseases, granulomatous diseases, autoimmune diseases and malignancies, and among the interstitial there are two broad groups of conditions like autoimmune and occupational diseases. In a patient who presents with fever, cough with mucopurulent sputum and breathlessness, who is treated with antibiotics and either do not respond or partially responds, and the X-ray shows a patch in the lungs, you think in terms of a non-resolving pneumonia. A typical pneumonia should respond to antibiotics, but a pneumonia which is not responding to antibiotics, you think of non-resolving pneumonias, and there are many causes of that. We won't go into it, but that's one conditions where you can have cough with abnormal X-rays. Second group of diseases are suppurative lung diseases. Two broad diseases are the bronchiectasis and lung abscess. The typical presentations will be of fever, cough, and the sputum characteristic is the most important. In these patients, they have copious purulent, foul-smelling sputum which aggravates when they change position. So that history is very important for this diagnosis. The third group of diseases are the granulomatous diseases like sarcoidosis. They can present with fever, cough with very scant sputum. They will have predominantly breathlessness and can have some constitutional symptoms like anorexia and weight loss. If you look at the X-rays, they have two types of findings. One is of bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy. The second is interstitial lung diseases. They may have some infiltrates in the lung. So those are the things that you have to keep it in mind. It is a very close differential to tuberculosis, which is so common in our country. We need to keep this differential in mind. A patient who is diagnosed or labeled as tuberculosis who is not showing response to anti-tubercular drugs, you need to keep sarcoid as a very close differential. Now you have a young laborer who complains of cough with scant sputum. He complains of breathlessness and also complains of anorexia and weight loss. That is the patient and that is his X-ray. What do you think is the diagnosis? I can hear some of you saying that he may be having a miliary tuberculosis. Often this diagnosis is considered with this kind of a background. A person who complains of anorexia, weight loss and an X-ray showing those typical findings, the key over here is his occupation history. This patient works in the stone quarry and so your diagnosis is silicosis. Now let's put all these things together and see how do I approach a patient who complains of cough for more than 8 weeks duration, which we are calling it as chronic cough. So we need to do a detailed history and a detailed examination. Now when we do that and do a chest X-ray, on doing all these three things, we may find that he may have some obvious cause for his chronic cough. If he is a smoker or if he is taking some medicines like angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, then you need to discontinue it and then observe. If the cough disappears, most likely that is a cause. If they do not have a history of smoking or taking drugs, but based on the history, if we find some obvious cause for cough, then we need to treat that and see the response. Even while treating adequately, there is no response, then we have this flow diagram to keep it in mind. It could be possibility an upper airway cough syndrome, UACS, as we talked about, and this is because of a post-nasal drip. So what we need to do is to treat that condition and wait and see whether it improves. If they improve, fine. If they do not improve, then consider things like a reactive airway disease or bronchial asthma. They can be evaluated by doing a spirometry and a provocation test. If it shows it to be positive, you treat it. Even if doesn't or you do not have facilities, treat them empirically with a bronchodilator and a steroid and look for the improvement. If they show improvement, most probably it is a reactive airway disease. If it does not show improvement, then consider this third entity called non-asthmatic eosinophilic bronchitis. Ideally, to evaluate this, you need to have sputum eosinophilia. If it is present, then they need to be treated with inhaled steroids. I would say if you are trying to differentiate between an asthma and a non-asthmatic eosinophilic bronchitis, just give them bronchodilators and look for the response. If there is a significant response, most probably it is a hyperreactive airway disease or asthma. If they are not responding much, it could be a non-asthmatic eosinophilic bronchitis. They would usually respond to steroids, because if you give steroids, both these conditions would improve. Then even if after all these, if the patient does not show improvement, then you consider gastroesophageal reflux disease, treat them with proton pump inhibitors and watch for the response. Anytime any patient responds to the empirical therapy, that is indirect way of making a diagnosis, but despite that, if they still have symptoms, then they need to be subjected to a panel of investigations. which includes a 24 hours esophageal pH monitoring, an endoscopy or video fluoroscopies, swallow evaluation, a barium esogram, a sinus imaging, a high resolution CT of the chest, a bronchoscopy, an echocardiogram, an environmental assessment, or consider other rare causes. So, these are the group of patients which may be required to a secondary or a tertiary hospital setup where these evaluation needs to be done, and based on their findings they can be treated appropriately. So, if I have to list down the various tests that a patient with a chronic cough where despite empirical therapy you do not find, are these like complete blood count, look for absolute eosinophilic count, a peripheral smear for microfilaria, a stool for parasites, a pulmonary function test which includes spirometry, a 24 hours of pH monitoring, an esophageal manometry, and on the radiology you can do an X-ray of the paranasal sinuses, a chest, a CT thorax or a high resolution CT of the chest, and a bronchoscopy. So, these are the tests that would be required for evaluation of a chronic cough, and most of it would be done at a higher center. Now, before we conclude, I would like to talk also about the cough etiquette or the hygiene. It's not good idea to cough on somebody's face, but we need to take some precautions because by coughing you can spread infections. And what are the steps? The steps are that always cover your nose or mouth with your hand or tissue when coughing or sneezing. Step 2, dispose the used tissue into the nearest garbage bin. Step 3, remember to wash your hand with water and soap. Use alcohol based liquids, gels or wipes wherever available. Step 4, encourage cough etiquette with patients and visitors by offering a tissue paper. And step 5 is offer surgical masks to people who are coughing in waiting areas. Okay, so in a summary, what we essentially want to say is cough is a symptom of an underlying disease. We don't treat cough, but we try to find out the underlying disease pathology. In an approach to cough, we divide them into acute and chronic and think of the various possibilities. And in the clinical approach, we try to first anatomically localize where the problem is, think of the most probable pathology based on our clinical evaluation, and then only think of the etiology. Investigate where investigation facilities are available, but short of that you can always treat them empirically, which will also be helping us in our diagnosis. 90% of the cough can be managed at a primary care level. So, only 10% needs to come to a higher center. So, wish you all the best and thank you.